All right, we're back. Here's the rundown for today. We're going to talk about Miguel Cotto versus Daniel Geale, Robert Guerrero, and his fight yesterday. We'll talk about Jesus Cuellar versus Victor Archinian, and that was for a title belt. We'll talk about some of the undercard of that fight. We're going to preview next week's HBO card that has 4 undefeated guys, everybody with knockout power except for Erislandy Lara. And then we'll talk about Deontay Wilder's big test with a pretty good undercard, and then the PBC card that's going to come on Friday night, and then we'll go over some of the news. So let's first start, though, with the Miguel Cotto versus Daniel Geale. And guys, there are going to be a lot of people out there that aren't going to give Cotto any respect for this win. And they're justified because, yeah, he did drain, or at least, I don't want to say drain because who knows, but he did make Daniel Geale come down to 157. And you know what? I think it's sad that Cotto is not going to get any recognition for what he accomplished last night. Because, like, if you stop and think it over for a second and take your hate for Cotto and your love for Golovkin and put it aside, we saw a junior middleweight make a light heavyweight quit. And that's not like, it's not like every junior middleweight can do that. But the thing is, though, and why Cotto's getting hate, and he's totally got himself to blame here. But Cotto needs to just be real with people. He's not a middleweight. He told half the truth last night, and that's a start. But he needs to tell the full truth. And it'll bring all of his fans back that he lost when he won the title from Martinez, when we saw how gone Martinez's knees really were. I think Cotto's lying, and he's way too arrogant to fully admit that he's not a middleweight and doesn't even plan on being one. If he just said that, I think I'd give him the respect back. I'd say, fine, I don't even expect you to go down or go up to fight Golovkin. Like, I'd put that out of mind because Golovkin's over here negotiating with Froch to fight at super middleweight, and we want this dude who just weighed in at 153 pounds to fight him. So guys, if Cotto just came out and told us flat out, I'm not going to fight at middleweight, does it change how you view him?
Well, what changed how I viewed him is when he already gave the response of, I won't be fighting any of my fights at the full middleweight limit of 160. He said, if you're fighting Miguel Cotto, you're fighting me at a catch weight. So that basically changed, my view on him.
Which was? What was the view
it changed. I'd say it reinforced my view. Let me not say change.
Then what was
reinforced my view of that he shouldn't be there to begin with. Because now because he's such a big monetary draw, he's going to be able to get fighters like the Geales of the world to agree to his demands and, drain down to whatever Cotto says because he's the one, he's going to be the A side in the majority of his fights. So it's frustrating that he has acknowledged that he refuses to fight at the middleweight limit. It's annoying that he just kind of holds that power, and he's just going to make people cater to him. So the hate against him is completely justified because you want to see middleweights fighting. And yeah, like you said, it was impressive what he was able to do to somebody who was a light heavyweight at the time. That's great. But so why drain him down to do it, though? So what makes it not impressive is that you had to have extraordinary circumstances to do it. You couldn't just let them come in and fight the way they want. So I don't know that I agree with you so much. Had he let Geale come in at 160 and did that, there's nothing even to say about him. It'd be, oh my God, this is amazing. How did he do this? But he's creating an environment where you're always able to criticize him rightfully. And he's fostered that. And he's continuing to foster that, and he has no intention of changing it. So until something gives, it's going to be annoying, and I'm not going to really care for him too much.
Well, what he needs to do is kill the expectation that people have, and that's what I'm pointing to. Kill the expectation, put it aside, and people might, expectation is what causes people to be upset. But Simon, you've been so quiet over there.
That's what he's been trying to do. That he tried to kill the expectation by telling people.
Yeah, but he's so arrogant, he doesn't just do it outright. Just be real with everybody.
He said, don't expect it. No, he said, I'm not fighting at the middleweight limit. All of my fights will be a catchweight. What are you talking about? That's
in the post-fight interview,
the expectation.
when Max Kellerman asked him, are you going to fight Gennady Golovkin? and he gave this roundabout answer, which led hope. Don't give any hope. Just say no.
He'll fight Golovkin at 155.
He didn't just say no, though. He took a big gulp first, didn't he, when he mentioned the name Golovkin? There's the look of fear washed over him.
Yeah, I don't know. Cotto's getting the hate that he deserves at this point.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any way to round about it and say that his performance was so impressive that he deserves to be praised.
Mm-hmm.
It just doesn't add up for me. If he's doing this to guys that he doesn't make come down to, below the limit that they're used to fighting at, that's a different story, But if you're going to force people down like that, it's always going to take away from your victories. Always.
It has been funny. There were a select group of people that weren't impressed by Golovkin's Geale victory, because who is Geale? Who even is he? But then it seems like the same people are really impressed with this.
Golovkin.
Oh yeah, exactly.
So do you have any problem with Geale quitting, essentially?
It was an odd one. You rarely see a fighter say that they don't want to carry on. It's kind of like a rarity, because they typically will fight with such spirit that it's their corner having to tell them when it's time to give up, if it is their team that's quitting rather than the fighter themselves. And that's why it was so momentous for Geale when he shook his head against Golovkin when he got up. And I don't know, he seems to have been comfortable doing that a second time. I can't believe that he was hurt in such a way that he, the same level of brutality that Golovkin would lay on someone. I wonder whether he's just lost that winning mentality and, at the first sign of trouble is just happy to shake his head off.
Well, that's what they say, right? You do it once, it's hard. You do, and then you could do it a second time, no problem.
It's easier. I was about to say the same thing.
Yeah, so it could have been one of those. To me, from the outset of the fight, it seemed pretty clear that Geale's punch resistance just wasn't there. It's either that or Cotto's got some Margarito gloves.
How funny would that be if Cotto pulled out the old Margarito wraps? You
know what I mean? Because there's no way that a guy with the size of Geale, should have been getting so hurt. So it just made me think that maybe Geale's just punch resistance is kind of shot at this point. The other thing that I wanted to think about is how many of Golovkin's victims have gone on to have impressive performances post being brutalized by him.
Curtis, wait, no.
No.
No. No.
Rosado?
Can you help me out?
Who is Golovkin, beat up and then they went on?
Are you trying to say he ruins people like Bernard Hopkins does?
I don't know. We're seeing a wake of fighters in his path that have not gone on to do great things after they fought him.
No, I don't want to dwell too much on the criticism. As it was, Cotto fought a good fight and looked really good, in the process. And congrats to Freddie Roach, who's broken his curse of the year and gets his first meaningful win since Ik Yang earlier.
That's February, guys.
Yeah, it's his first proper, good win for one of his fighters in 4 or 5 months now.
I feel like the answer to this question is pretty obvious, but I'm going to ask it anyway because maybe you guys want to surprise me. For Cotto's next fight, it's Canelo, right? It's not Rod Salka. I mean, Floyd Mayweather.
If it got into Floyd's camp's head that would be a good fight to make, then Cotto would be a fool to turn it down, because it'd be more profitable for him than a fight against anyone else. As much as him against Canelo is going to be a kind of South American, bonanza that's going to be highly watched and high earning, I still have a feeling it's not going to compare to a Mayweather payday, even though we know how that plays out. So I think that one rests solely on Mayweather's shoulders. If they decide that that's a good move, then that's what will happen. Without that fight being on offer, though, and I don't think that they will want that at any rate. So yeah, on the assumption that Floyd decides not to take it has got to be Canelo surely later this year.
So who does Mayweather have on the table that could provide as big of a payday as Cotto at this point? I don't know that he has another option that looks as attractive as Cotto right now.
That is true.
Well, Mayweather could grow some balls and stop running away from Golovkin.
Because that's what he does in the ring. But no,
I don't
seriously,
know why you always have to make fun of Mayweather. Every podcast, what is it with Floyd Mayweather that you don't like? I'm just kidding. No, guys, I want to wrap up
No, but I'm
this Cotto
who
discussion.
I can't think of somebody who has better earning potential. That's a prospective Mayweather opponent.
A Pacquiao
Ruling out
rematch. A Pacquiao rematch. Are you guys convinced with this Roach Cotto? Or do you think he's just been fighting wounded animals this entire time?
Maybe a bit of both.
I haven't been convinced.
Yeah, I mean, it's true the opposition aren't the best possible opposition that he could go for, but he hasn't looked flawed or limited in his outings, has he?
No, and I was going to say, there's an argument that
giant
this Geale
asterisk.
fight was his best performance in his entire career.
Yeah, but there's an asterisk next to every post Trout victory. There's an asterisk next to him.
What is it?
Well, for Delvin Rodriguez, it was Delvin Rodriguez. For Martinez, it was his knees. For Geale, it was a catchweight.
Right.
So there's a giant asterisk next to everything, and that's something.
This is true.
This is something that's easily glossed over by fans, right? Because you want to look at the performance, you want to see what he did, and he looked great because he did. I don't want to take away from how good he looked because he absolutely did, but you can't forget that there's an asterisk next to every single one of these Freddie Roach victories.
Yeah, but there are people who go into showcase fights that they should be stomping, and they end up doing a Guerrero and looking terrible in the process, or you can pick faults in what they're doing.
Transition, Simon.
But
You should be the host.
But yeah, with Cotto, I think he hasn't looked massively limited in those. So yeah, there's asterisks, but he's lived up to it, and he hasn't looked bad in what should be showcase fights.
All right, so let's talk about a real showcase fight. So Aron Martinez was facing Robert Guerrero at the empty StubHub Arena at 12 noon here on the Pacific time, where it was like 69 degrees over there. Pretty bad time to choose to put your card on, but I guess it was horse racing on during the day on NBC. Anyway, Guerrero got dropped. Probably worse than he did against Thurman. I don't think he was completely shaken up, but you got dropped against Aron Martinez, who'd been out of the ring for a while, who scored 4 knockouts in his entire career, and then Guerrero scrapes by, limps to the finish. First question for you guys is, do you guys care to see Robert Guerrero fight again?
I didn't care to see him fight this time, but it was great. It was great to watch him get in a real tough fight and get dropped by somebody with a 16% KO ratio. That made my Saturday afternoon. It was just like Robert Guerrero fights to his level of competition, I guess, is what, he fought down to his level of competition in this fight. He certainly didn't fight upwards when he had to take on Mayweather, but he's very comfortable fighting down to it. Anybody with the right mind from a matchmaking point of view thought this was a showcase fight, and he turned it into a war, and that was awesome.
I'm really torn on this fight because I think you're right, but at the same time, I don't think you're right. Guerrero's problem is that he doesn't know how to set the pace in a fight unless it's going to be a dirty fight. The one we saw against Berto. And he's got to be against a pretty low IQ fighter to give into what Guerrero wants to do. And he let this guy smother him and fight inside the whole time, and he paid the price by doing that. And the last thing I have to say about this fight, because there's really not much else to say, is that, do you think Guerrero's going to keep getting these fights and, these cash-out fights where he gets to use his name because Al Heyman likes him and wants his family to get paid because of, his wife's cancer and everything?
I don't know how much that'll be a factor.
It's the only explanation I could come up with.
Yeah.
This isn't the end of Guerrero, though, if that's what you're implying. And I think it is. I think you're right. He's a good name. That's what he is. He's a good name to be used for Al Heyman's stable.
Well, Earl Spence is next. He's got next on Guerrero. Or maybe the loser of Porter versus Broner. So Sean Porter versus Guerrero, that should be a good fight towards the end of the year, maybe in the fall. All right, now let's talk about Jesus Cuellar versus Victor Arcinian. And there's really not too much to say about this fight, even though some people are going to say, oh, Cuellar, this guy's for real. He's got real power. Stop. I'm not convinced by Cuellar at all. This guy made Vic Darchinyan look like Floyd Mayweather for half of that fight. I mean, when a 40-year-old featherweight can look like Floyd Mayweather, yeah, Darchinyan did get knocked out. He did get caught with a huge shot. But it's a little concerning when, Darchinyan isn't even putting his hands up. He's rolling all of his punches and then countering him with big power shots. He hit him with a left hook in the first round that let Cuellar know really quickly, oh, yeah, I can easily lose this fight. And Cuellar's been knocked out before or stopped or something. So it's not a good sign for Cuellar when Darchinyan looks that good.
No, and he's going to be in a difficult one. He needs to hope, really, that he can avoid another matchup at that level for a little bit. Let Selby get.
I was about to say Selby beats him.
Yeah, Selby. Yeah, exactly. So Selby, as long as Selby can rush through Warrington and get that one done and out the way quickly, then that's a very appealing, because it's another winnable fight with someone that's fighting with a reputation above their stable. So he's always going to struggle with those people at the top, but this guy's made for him.
I was looking for how to twist this on you, Simon, and make this into an insult. Or make it that you were insulting Lee Selby. But the point here is that Selby beats Cuellar. And Cuellar does have potential, though. It's not like he's a terrible fighter. Other fights from the undercard, we saw Alfredo Angulo, who failed to make middleweight, win by KO5. Marvin Sansona, who I told you guys last week was overrated, and people are basing his entire reputation off of one knockout over a domestic Japanese fighter. He won a majority fighter over a guy who got 2 wins in his last 8 fights. That's probably less impressive than Robert Guerrero's win over whoever he fought. I can't even remember his name.
If such a thing were possible.
I don't even know. Yeah.
All right, we're running through the schedule this week, guys. We're going to be able to talk a little bit more about Lee Selby later on, and Anthony Joshua.
That's what happens when you have Robert Guerrero fight.
All right, so next week, HBO has, I think, one of their best cards that they're going to be putting on in a while. Maybe I change my mind after we see it and we realize that these are just 2 showcase fights.
What's got you so hyped?
Jason's already going to say.
There's nothing coming up in terms of cards that I thought that card's going to be phenomenal. So what is it that's piqued you?
What's got me about this card is that we have 4, 2 who are name brand commodities who are rising, who score knockouts. Felix Verdejo and Nicholas Walters. Walters is fighting a 20-0 Colombian with 18 knockouts. Verdejo's fighting one of top-ranked prospects, a 16-0 fighter with 8 knockouts in Ivan Najera. Walters and Verdejo are without a doubt promising, and Walters is legit already. But this is the perfect boxing after dark fight where it's like, you win this fight and you're on to bigger, better things. And so let's first talk about Walter versus Mariaga. First of all, what did you we weren't doing a podcast back then, but his knockout, and Jason, we were there live, his knockout over Donaire, do you guys take any, I don't know what the word is, do you guys have a gripe with the fact that he hit Donaire in the back of the head when Donaire finally went down for the final time?
If I recall, kind of Donaire was turning his head and kind of on the way down too, right? And then he really clocked him as he was turning his head.
Yeah.
It wasn't like an intentional, I didn't think it was as intentional as it was just where the punch was thrown at the time, and then Donaire, twisted a little. I don't necessarily take anything away from that because of that. He had Donaire's number. That was pretty clear. Donaire looked kind of unimpressive in his last fight, and then he scored that come from behind knockout of Darchinyan. So I was kind of unsold on where Donaire was at, and then Walters being able to just completely have him from the first round kind of cemented that. Walters is definitely a promising fighter to keep an eye out on.
So this is featherweight too. So is Walters the best featherweight out there?
I don't think so. Definitely.
So it's Lee Selby?
I don't think it's proven yet, but I think that it'll likely look that way.
What? Please rephrase that. I'm not sure what you meant by that, Simon.
I mean,
What he's
he has the ability to be, but I think that I don't know.
Are you talking about Lee Selby or Walters?
Walters?
Oh, okay, go on.
Yeah,
I thought this whole time he was
I
talking
thought he was
about
talking about
Selby.
Selby.
Yeah, this is really weird.
He could be the best in the world. It's just unproven yet. He's totally flipped his stake. The Kotovich victory.
no. I think Walters could be, but then there's some fringe contenders of division up or division down that could jump in and dethrone him. So look, people like Rigondo, for example.
Okay, and then
Walters is pretty big too, if I recall, right?
Yeah,
he is a really
He's
big guy.
definitely- He'll be on the move upwards, I would imagine, right?
yeah.
Yeah, I could see him going as far as 140. I was standing next to him after the Donaire fight, and I think he can easily go to 140. He's kind of got a lean body shape, but I mean, you're weighing at 126. You're not going to look like Daniel Geale on fight night.
Yeah, I think
he beats Lomachenko. What do you guys think?
Well, this is it. I don't know how he does against Lomachenko. Even the Gary Russell Jr. fight would be interesting. So I think Nicholas Walters could stamp himself as the king of the division, but there's some trouble out there, and there's some questions that will come asking.
So, Angelo, you opened this topic up with the back of the head shot. Did you have something to say about it?
Surprisingly, no. What I wanted to say, though, is that my initial impression of Walters when I first started to watch him was that he wasn't that good. He had a lot of power, but he's not that good. He's fights like a guy whose trainer doesn't exactly know what he's got on his hands. I thought Walters, he fought like a guy who was way smaller than he really was. He didn't know how to use his jab, didn't know how to keep his opponents at the end of his punches, and when he was scoring knockouts, it was kind of incidental and not because he was setting them up and perfectly executing. And in his
sounds like the kind of fighter Lomachenko could be.
Well, that's what I was going to get to. He's improved some, but you even saw it against Darchinyan. I was never impressed with that Darchinyan win for Walters because he was making a lot of the same mistakes that he had made earlier in his career, and this is where Lomachenko would, I think, be able to control him should they ever fight. And guys, I just want to also say this about Marriaga. This guy is 20-0. He's got 18 knockouts, but the record's not legit. The best win he's got is the guy who was like 25-4. It's mostly, what you'd expect from a Colombian prospect who's mostly fought in the area that he lives in. So nobody really.
We said the same thing about Diego Chavez too the first time he came over. So you just never know with these guys. Sometimes they got a little bit of toughness in them.
It's one of those
absence
of evidence isn't evidence of absence. Just because they haven't stepped up doesn't mean they couldn't. But all it means is that we have no reliable evidence right now to predict favorably for them.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. I mean, I haven't.
Oh yeah, I'm not really trying to dispute that as much as just. Make some kind of a counterpoint for him.
Yeah, and it's worth making because often there'll be people that say this record's not legit, they're nobody. But everyone starts as nobody, and everyone needs that opportunity and that moment that they go from.
Didn't start as nobody.
You're picking the thin, narrow exceptions to the rule is that the majority of people have to go through their paces, and depending on where they've come from and what their background and history is, dictates how easy it is for them to turn pro. There's people that, do well in the Olympics, for example, that get a spotlight on them as soon as they turn pro, but then there'll be people that have to slog it out the hard way and take, 12, 15, 18 fights that are in obscurity against people of, little reputation before someone notices them and gives them that chance. And just because someone falls into that camp doesn't mean you write them off immediately. If you want to say we haven't got the evidence yet to go on to say that they're going to be fantastic, that's fair enough because that evidence doesn't exist yet. But we can't discredit them immediately.
Do we know how we ended up with this fight, Angelo? Is he some top-ranked kid? Probably not. Is he a mandatory? He just moved himself up in the rankings somehow?
No clue. Walters got sick when he was scheduled to fight on the... I don't even know when he was scheduled to fight, but he was going to fight, and then he got sick with the flu, which I think is code for Walters wasn't on pace to make weight. And we've got this one. Oh, and they also needed...
Who else fought with the flu?
Who? Michael
Golovkin
Jordan?
versus Rosado.
Well, Golovkin is something else. But Michael Jordan did play.
An angel, if you ever heard his recounting the story, an angel came to him in his dreams the night before the fight and told him he'd be fine.
Did he need an angel to come tell him that he would be fine against Gabe Rosado?
Well, I guess he was running like 103-degree fever or something the night before the fight.
Mhm.
We don't need to get sidetracked, guys.
Maybe we do.
Sorry.
So Felix Verdejo is going to make his HBO debut, his full-on HBO debut. And, I mean, we all know Felix Verdejo, Puerto Rican kid. You look at his highlights, and it's just unbelievable that this guy has scored so many knockouts that look as ridiculous as his. But his opponent, Ivan Nahara, who's 16-8, he was a promising prospect as he was coming up, and I think Top Rank had big plans for him. I think he's marketable and everything. But once he left that first stage, which is like, when you leave the Viridian Forest in Pokemon, where you actually start to face the real people now, suddenly Nahara's power disappeared, and he hasn't scored a knockout since.
But this is still going to be a step up for Verdejo, though, wouldn't you say?
I don't think so. Because, this guy hasn't scored a knockout in 2 years.
Well, okay.
And he's not
Showcase
a
fight?
good boxer. I would say that this is a perfect fight for Verdejo, given that he's making his HBO debut against a guy with
always
an
take that into
undefeated
consideration.
record.
Yeah.
Like, this is how you, like, if you wanted to sell Verdejo to people as real, this is how you do it.
Right. Sounds good to me. I'm happy to see HBO showcasing a bunch of these fighters that we've kind of been talking about for a year or two now, like Gonzalez and Verdejo, and then bam, now we've got them on HBO. That doesn't always happen, so it's good to see that HBO is moving in a direction where they're letting these guys on.
Well, you know what you should do?
What should I do?
Thank Al Heyman.
Write a letter to the president.
You should thank Al Heyman, because without PBC coming along, I don't think HBO ever has any real pressure to bring Gonzalez on. And, they're bringing Verdejo up, pretty quickly. But there's a couple of reasons why. I think the timing is perfect to bring in another lightweight into the division. The belt is vacant. Thank you, Ray Beltran, for not making weight.
No, for doing drugs.
Thank you, Ray Beltran, for not making weight. And, Verdejo could be fighting for a title within 2 fights, I think.
It's a good market to capitalize on within lightweight, because there's not really any established danger at the top. So it wouldn't take someone extraordinary to come in and do things with lightweight. And then beyond that, the divisions below and the prospects in lightweight who are coming mean that even if you're only average and you sit on top of the lightweight throne for a bit, there's someone coming for you that's going to put on some good fights later down the line.
This is the perfect time for any network to really bring up a lightweight, and we're going to see, multiple lightweight fights this weekend, because it's really who can get there first. Because if you can get there first and do it impressively, you are now going to be established as the best lightweight in the world to the casual fan, regardless of how talented you actually are. Because power is intoxicating. They have Verdejo in a position where he can use his power to convince everybody, hey, we have a new best lightweight on the planet, and everybody's going to tune in now to see the lightweight champion, who may or may not actually even be good. Now, I'm not saying that with Verdejo, because I do think he's good. He has enough of an amateur record, and I've seen enough in his fights that when his power isn't there, he knows how to, bail himself out. All right, since you guys are so excited about Felix Verdejo, let's talk about Deontay Wilder's big challenge against Eric Molina. He's going to defend the heavyweight title in Alabama against Eric Molina.
I mean, you got to give the guy credit for really stepping up, his level of competition in his last 2 fights. So I'm just really glad to see that we finally have an American heavyweight champion that all of America could be proud of.
Yeah, guys, this is the direction we're going to go. Okay, just gushing about Deontay Wilder. So go ahead, Simon.
It's bollocks, isn't it? It's so infuriating.
You got these other heavyweights, just all they'll do is fight Euro bums. And then you got a real American champion finally, who's willing to test himself against the best.
And we've seen that American heavyweights are really good. Kubrat Pulev fought Vladimir Klitschko and got himself knocked out, but Bryant Jennings didn't. He lasted all 12 rounds with Klitschko and, lost a split decision It might have been close, but it might not have been split, but it was close.
I think Jonathan Banks,
He trains him. I mean, Jonathan Banks is also a really good heavyweight out there, too.
Anything to say, Simon?
Yeah, it is. It's nonsense, isn't it? It's so poor that you can have Wilder defend against someone who got knocked out by Areola, a couple of years ago and hasn't done anything particularly, impressive since. It's just poor that isn't put on blood. And there are people calling it out, but it's not nearly as loud as it should be, that this is a terrible matchup by someone defending a belt that shouldn't be worth anything in anyone's estimations if it's allowed to be treated like that. It's just maddening that someone can do that. He's Molina's ranked 44th by BoxRec in the world in the heavyweight division. It's a joke. And there's people that are critical at the minute of people like AJ that say AJ needs to step up. He's fighting,
Kevin
poor
Johnson,
opposition and needs to step up.
Oh yeah,
Vitaly
look what the heavyweight champion of the world is fighting.
And seemingly receiving less complaints as a result, though. I see less people calling out Wilder for this absolute nonsense than people putting pressure on the likes of Joshua needing to step up and things like that. I mean, there are so many viable defenses. You don't want to lose to Klitschko and you're scared of that outcome. Fair enough. But there's so many names out there that would have led more credence to you than Eric Molina. Go and fight Chisora and make sure he's asleep and bore him over 12 rounds. There's so much. Even that would be more respectable, in my opinion, than this fight.
Well, look, everybody deserves a shot at the heavyweight title. I mean, I think they're running a charity over there with the WBC with how they're giving out their titles.
I mean, who would have thought a young Eric Molina would have grown up to challenge for the heavyweight championship of the world?
I think the big thing about this fight, though, when White hasn't gotten the criticism is because nobody cares at this point. I think Deontay Wilder's white noise for most of the fight, most boxing fans out there.
I wish that were true, but I see him turn up on people's pound-for-pound top 10 list.
Yeah, but I delete those.
Those were removed. Automod is set to remove those.
It's just so bad that this can be allowed to happen, and I can't wait until either the WBC grows some teeth and gets involved, although that's never going to happen.
Not going to happen.
Or that the market force it just by calling it out in the most clear terms possible, that you have to start taking some defenses with real meaning behind them, because there's a load of people waiting for this. And Vlad is obviously keen to unify and hold every belt in the division and become unified, and that he wants to take his place in history as the unified undisputed champion, and Wilder's just getting in the way of that at the minute.
If I wanted to play devil's advocate here,
you should.
The devil's advocate position that I would take here would be
I'm about to slay you.
Go ahead. Every champion is entitled, once you win your championship, it's pretty well understood that you'll be able to have a voluntary defense of that.
Okay, there's voluntary, and then there's slaughtering some, guy who really should not even belong in the ring with you.
But it's still
no
a voluntary.
It's no diss on Molina. But dude, come on.
It's a voluntary defense nonetheless. That's what it is. He's doing it in his hometown. That might be good to drum up some popularity for him.
Fine,
you know what I mean?
I would mind that less if you'd won the belt in a legitimate way against someone who deserved it. But this was like gift wrapped, given to the Stavern-Areola fight, and then Stavern carted off to Wilder. It was so manufactured. This isn't a belt that's been obtained legitimately. This is a belt that's found its way because the WBC, loves being the WBC, and has sent it, off to Wilder to now look after. So if Wilder had taken this off someone credible, then fair enough, have your soft voluntary, but you've done nothing to warrant it. I mean, yeah, credit to you. You looked better than I expected you to against Stavern, but even still, you should be stepping up to at least above the top 40 in the division.
Well, Stavern has 2 quality wins over one of the most fit heavyweights in the world out there, so I don't really think you should discredit his win too quickly. The next fight, which will be televised on the card, is Jose Pedraza versus Klimov, which Klimov, you'll probably remember him from his HBO shutout, where Terrence Crawford beat him over the course of 10 rounds, not losing a round in a performance that was deemed by HBO so horrific they refused to televise Crawford's first title shot against Ricky Burns. So he, according to HBO, Crawford really laid an egg in the ring there. What do you think about this fight, Angelo?
Well, it's an IBF title fight for their vacant title, and first things first, okay? The super featherweight division has a king. His name is Takashi Uchiyama, and then he's got a second in line, which is Takashi Miura. Pedraza might beat Miura. He might be. Pedraza can box, and he has a little bit of power, and Miura can be outboxed. I mean, let's not make any mistake about that. But he is a pressure fighter, and I'm not even talking about this fight because, well, we'll just see if Pedraza is as good of a boxer. At least, keeping a guy on the outside and outboxing him as Terence Crawford. It wasn't very hard for Crawford to outbox Klimov, although I don't really remember too much from that fight. It was pretty dreadful.
It could be the new guard, though. I mean, he's got youth on his side, and as much as you'd expect the Takashis to do well, they're getting on.
Yeah, but if you watch them fight, so's Miguel Cotto. He's getting on, and he's looking better and better.
This is true, but they're
devastating as ever.
They're higher weights than they would typically be. So it's a lightweight class to get that old in.
No, I see your point there, but
I
Victor
appreciate
just
at the
looks
minute
like Floyd Mayweather at 40 years old. So
this is true. The division at the minute is very much the Takashi's castle, but they're not going to be there forever, and someone has to be the new guard that comes in and upsets things. Maybe it is Pedraza, maybe not. But
I think it's Walters when he gets there, and then Oscar Valdez when he gets there. I think this is, how sometimes it like skips a generation where the Takashis are clearly the king of this generation, and then we got the Pedrazas and the Klimovs who've been out there for a while. It's not going to be them. They're just going to be, what is the word? They're just going to be the fill-in or the stand-in for when the next real wave of fighters comes up.
Well, this is it. I think it happens where usually it's generational, but if you've got people that are next level, they seem to be able to put another generation at bay with their skills. You've seen Klitschko's done it, of stopping a generation from peeping through.
Several generations, I think.
Ward, you could argue Ward did it for a bit in super middleweight, where stopped people from peeking through. Mayweather's done. There's people that do that. They just stop the youngest from coming through until age finally intervenes.
That's a really good indication of how exceptional a fighter is. That ability to remain dominant even over the younger, fiercer, hungrier quote unquote fighters coming up. It's a really easy, simple way to kind of analyze how dominant a fighter is.
Yeah. So enough of that fight. Another fight. I don't even think this one's going to be televised. I really hope it is though. Ivan Redkach versus Dejan Zlatikanen. Simon, help me out.
That's all right, yeah.
Zlatikanen. Because people always comment and say that we say the names wrong. I'm trying to get this right.
I don't know. The boxing fandom of Montenegro is going to be limited already. I'm not sure how many listeners will garner from that region.
I don't know. If I check the stats, it's roughly 79%.
Montenegrin.
So this is the best fight on the card, and the second best fight, I think, of the entire weekend. Redkach's this Ukrainian dude. He's tough. He can punch. And Zlatikanen is probably the best lightweight that most people haven't heard of. His claim to fame is beating up Ricky Burns after Burns had lost to Crawford. I think Zlatikanen's win over Burns was far more impressive, though, than Terence Crawford's. And I know Jason's about to have a heart attack right here, but it was. He dropped Burns in the first round with the clean left hook. The guy can box. I mean, that's really all I can say about him. And Redkach, I think, is just too early for him. The first time I saw him, I wasn't too impressed with him. What do you guys think?
I think he could do it. I like this matchup. As you say, it's one of the more compelling. And that's not to discredit any of the other fights. This one's just particularly good. You got
You're not
two
discrediting
undefeated.
Wilder Molina?
Well, we'll discredit that one.
The
Discount
heavyweight
it.
champion
Even.
of the world.
That's not even a fight, is it? But yeah, you got two undefeated people going at it. They've as we said with lightweight, it's a division that's there for the taking.
They'd really do well to televise a bout like this. There's a great narrative behind it, as far as everything that we've been talking about. So
And then,
they'd be remiss to not show this one.
Yeah,
I mean,
experience obviously favors the guy with the higher rounds behind him, but I think Redkach's got more stoppages to his name despite fewer fights.
You know what? This is a Showtime card. They normally televise 3 or 4 fights at a time, unlike HBO. So I would go ahead and feel pretty comfortable saying this should be televised. Plus, Julian Williams is fighting, and they always televise him. So,
Simon, both guys have fought on Showbox, by the way, in Julian Williams and Ivan Redkach. What is their connection, though? You were telling us before the podcast that both Redkach and Zlatikanen had a connection.
Yeah, they connected in a way that they don't have giant fan bases, and they're going to be in a division where they're probably, one of them's going to go on to do good stuff within division, but they are just a placeholder waiting for Luke Campbell to come and earn his stripes against them later on.
All right, the day before, Erislandy Lara versus Delvin Rodriguez in what's going to be a very entertaining junior middleweight fight.
you think? Okay, yeah, that was a good joke. See, every once in a while, Angelo slips in a joke and everybody doesn't notice, so I'm just trying to bring it to everybody's attention. That was a joke.
Just signposting it.
Yep, just in case. Delvin is from Danbury. He's about 20 minutes away from where I live, Connecticut. I'll be pulling for him.
You should drive over and give him a bat so he can actually touch Lara.
Well, yeah, he'll probably need like 2 bats taped together, but he's a good guy, tough, rugged fighter. It's not going to do him any favors in this fight. Lara should have a pretty, this should be a showcase fight for Lara. Is there such thing?
His first showcase.
Is there? But hang on, Lara's a tough guy. Is there a showcase fight for Lara? Like nobody really enjoys watching his style. Like, how do you showcase a guy like Lara? I guess you put him in with Delvin Rodriguez. That's how.
Well, we'll see. I mean, I thought the Ish Smith was, I guess Ishe is how you say it. The Ishe Smith fight was going to be a showcase for Lara, and that, I don't know, man. That was a tough fight to watch, and I enjoy watching Lara. I won't. Nobody will criticize me for saying that, right?
I don't particularly.
He's not Ik Yang, but
Cuban, of the Cuban school of fighters, I don't particularly care for Lara very much. Whereas I don't mind watching Rigondeaux. Lara just.
How do you guys feel about Gamboa? He's one of my favorite fighters.
From an entertainment perspective, or am I selling his stock? Yeah, entertainment, perfect. Yeah, absolutely. But I'm not buying any stock.
Simon's like, how have we gotten into this conversation?
Simon disconnected. He heard Gamboa and dropped the call.
He heard Lara and fell asleep. All right, we'll go on without him. On the undercard also is Artur Beterbiev versus Alexander Johnson in a pretty quick turnaround.
He's keeping a busy schedule.
It's going to be a fun matchup.
Oh, look who's back.
We're talking about relevant people. It's all right.
Simon doesn't like to hear about the American domestic scene.
Yeah, don't worry. We'll go on for days.
The domestic scene's fine. The domestic scene's fine when we're talking about people
Robert
relevant
Guerrero?
to something.
but
yeah, not the over the hill side of things. But I don't know. I like this matchup.
Lara's like 33.
Yeah, Lara's.
No, Lara's good.
Lara's Lara domestic by any stretch.
No, this is true. Then we ventured into Gamboa and it got messy. But you got Alexander the Great out against King Arthur, and that's a good one.
So anybody who doesn't know who Alexander Johnson is, he's a pretty decent fighter. Last year he lost a decision when he was a pretty like a late fill-in against Eleider Alvarez, who's another prospect out of Montreal. or Quebec or wherever that is that Stevenson fights at. And he won a decision, he lost a decision, even though most people thought he would get knocked out. So he's a little better than advertised, and I think he's actually
just like
a pretty
that
good
guy
fighter.
that Guerrero fought.
Kind of. I think Beterbiev will have much more success against Johnson, and in fact, Beterbiev is no Alvarez. He will run through Johnson.
He should. If he's what we're being sold he is, it should be a short night.
Indeed. We might get to see Artur Szpilka on the card, who's also in action on the undercard, and Elider Alvarez, who's on the undercard, and maybe we might even see Anthony Peterson, who is Lamont Peterson's brother. Okay. You guys are excited about this one, I can tell.
Well, I mean, they're
I know how you guys are spending your Friday night. I'm going to force you to watch it, though, Jason.
Yeah, you'll like put up some thread. Is EA doing round by round coverage? Vote yes or something.
They could have used Spilica for the Wilder fight, couldn't they? Thinking about it.
Yes.
No,
yep. They could have used Steve Cunningham. Or did Steve Cunningham just lose?
Yeah, he did against Glazkov, didn't he?
Yeah, he did.
Glazkov. Yeah.
I mean, Spilka would have been a great fight for Wilder.
Yeah. And he's lost to Brian Jennings, so you could even feel somewhat safe in it.
Yep.
Right.
But,
yep. Absolutely.
Khan Algieri. It did roughly 1 million viewers on Spike TV on a Friday night, and you're going to see just how good that is when we see the Lara Rodriguez ratings next week.
But, those ratings are going to be abysmal.
Right. So Thurman did a 3.01. Cotto Rodriguez, way back when, did a 1.5. Stevenson did a 1.4. Golovkin Rubio did Chavez Rubio did a 1.4. Golovkin Rubio did a 1.3. Rubio's a massive draw. Stavern Areola did a 1.3.
Madness, though. I think the most watched thing this year has been Wilder Stavern in January. It was Canelo in Kirkland. Oh, was it? Was that overtaken? But my point is that the viewership doesn't correlate to the quality of the matchup or the quality of either fighter or the significance of the fight.
No, it speaks to the popularity strictly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
but the thing about Khan Algieri, just to put into a little bit of perspective, fighting, what was that on Angelo Spike?
Right,
fighting on Spike TV.
Let me just throw this out there. Canelo Kirkland did a 2.1, and Wilder Stavern did a 1.2. 1.3, sorry. 1.3.
So
anyway, back to what you were saying.
Yeah, on Spike TV.
Yep.
It had a lead-in block of 6 hours of the television show Cops, back to back.
Oh, no wonder why it did so high of a rating.
Like, I look at Spike, and it's just Cops PBC card once a week. Cops PBC. Very interesting network.
Yeah.
But I was so I guess what I'm trying to say is nothing was leading fans into this fight. They're not doing a ton of advertising. You know what I mean? So that's a decent number.
What there is to say here is Khan and Algieri. I think it's a combination. I don't think it was just Khan alone who sold this, because I don't think Khan Collazo does a 1. I think Algieri has a lot to do with this. I think he's a much bigger draw than we might think he is. But the fact that he did a 1 on a Friday night on Spike TV with his Cops lead-in,
that's
nobody
wants
to say it, but it kind of says that Khan might deserve the Mayweather fight.
It doesn't say that it deserves the Mayweather fight, because that would have to be something that you do with an in-ring. Why do you just repeat and say
exactly the opposite of what I say?
That would have to do with having an in-ring performance that would warrant such a fight, which he didn't have. But
Since
sure.
Okay, yeah, actually, never mind.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Never mind.
Well, Khan hasn't beaten Berto, so he can't get a Mayweather fight.
I think it's safe to say that Khan could beat Berto on the cards, at least.
I think it's safe too.
But they have the same trainer, so I don't think that's going to happen.
But you're right. I guess it does. it does speak to his popularity that he was able to get a decent rating.
And on popularity alone, I think we can sell Khan as Mayweather's opponent, even if his in-ring performance was less than convincing. But Simon,
But Cotto's such a better draw. Sorry.
Simon, Khan accused Kell Brook of using PEDs.
Right.
Kell Brook said he's bored of him. Khan says,
Yep.
I'm bored of you.
Mm.
Are we going to get this fight, or are they just going to bicker at each other through British tabloids?
This is an inevitability. I don't think that this is a question of will it happen, won't it happen. It's a when will it happen. And we've gone over this ground a lot, and the conclusion to come to is that this will come as a guaranteed payday when all the other paydays have been fully eliminated. So this could mean that we're waiting on both of them to receive definitive losses, again in the case of Khan, or to begin with for Brook. But once neither of them has a better option on the table, they'll be taking it. So yeah, it will happen, definitely. But when we're not speculating about Khan Mayweather, when we're not speculating about Brook Pacquiao, Brook Thurman, things like that. While those options are available, or at least in the ether, and we're considering them, I don't see any reality to Khan Brook. It's going to be a last case fight because it sells itself no matter what either of them have been through.
So if I said to you guys, you have to bet $30, who's Khan and who's Brook fighting next? And if you're wrong, I get to keep your 30. Oh, did somebody here lose 30?
That's this guy. What an odd figure to pluck out of midair. Yeah.
No, $1,000, guys. Who are you predicting is next for both of these guys?
So Brook Thurman.
It's a long layoff for Brook, by the way.
Sorry?
That's
Why?
gonna be a
Thurman's
long
got something
layoff
scheduled?
for Brook. Thurman's fighting in August against Luis Collazo.
Collazo gets sick. Brook.
Yeah, Collazo can catch a cold. But I don't think that's going to be prohibitive.
The old Molinaggi, huh?
And
I got cut. But now I'm fighting Danny Garcia.
Khan Molinaggi, there you go.
So Simon has Khan fighting Molinaggi and Brook. So it's Khan Molinaggi too, and then Brook's fighting Thurman. Jason, what about you?
You're going to have to give me a second.
Jason's trying to come up with the funniest.
No.
the
I'm just
top
trying
five
to bring up a list of.
Walter White.
Eggington with TON at the end.
So Khan's going to fight Thurman, and Brook's going to fight Mayweather. Simon's going to.
You think there's any chance that Brook gets a Mayweather fight?
No.
Yeah, it's zero.
Pacquiao, yeah. I'm leaning more towards that.
I'd love to see Brook Maidana.
That would actually be a really good fight. I think Brook stops him.
I think
from
one of
using
them
Everlast MX gloves.
One of them should end up with the winner of
Eggington Skeet.
Yeah, right. Porter Broner fight. I would imagine if Khan doesn't get a Mayweather fight, he'll end up with the winner of the Broner Porter fight.
Can you imagine if Porter wins somehow and gets again?
Khan.
I can't imagine that happening. Yeah, I don't know what's on the books for Brook. That's really tricky. He's got a fight lined up, right? Isn't he? Fight lined up, I mean, is like his promoter has him booked to fight, right?
Yeah, Hearn is talking about late August, but nothing's definitive. It's not like AJ, who's already going to fight on July 18th, and it's a matter of picking the opponent.
Mm.
Brooks
Any chance
just
we see
tentatively
like Brook,
late.
Devin Alexander or something?
We don't need to see Brook Devin Alexander.
I'm not saying we need to. I'm just saying it's a possible fight.
I think if Brook is going to fight in late August, his opponent will likely be somebody who doesn't have a name brand to them. I don't think there's anybody out there you can get ready that quick to fight him who's got some name recognition.
Dekari?
We don't really need to see that fight. And I don't think so. I think it's going to be Rios.
The fight that you're describing also sounds like a fight we don't need to see. So don't be so dismissive of what I'm throwing at you.
True. I think it's going to be Brandon Rios, though.
Okay.
And that goes along in the category of fights we don't need to see. I
don't
think.
know.
I mean, do you
I'd
really?
be okay with seeing. I'd be okay
We're
with that
supposed to be
fight.
talking about Khan here. What the hell happened?
I thought you were talking about Brooke.
All right. Well, we'll just not talk about either one of them. Francisco Rodriguez Jr. has signed to fight Donny Nietes for the light flyweight title on July 4th, which is also not just American Independence Day, but Filipino Independence Day from Mexico, I hear. I don't know that for sure. I mean, most people don't know about these guys, but you know how we were talking about Roman Gonzalez and we hyped him up and everybody was really hyping him up. You know, watch this guy. He's really good. He's amazing. He's entertaining. He brings all this to the table. So this is the next one. Oh, Kosei Tanaka too. We did that, but nobody really listened because I haven't seen many people talking about him who put on an unbelievable performance. But don't miss out on this one, okay? This is going to be a fight of the year contender. Francisco Rodriguez is the unified minimum weight champion who just decided he doesn't want to fight there anymore, so he just let those titles go and moved up to light flyweight. Donny Nietes is the reigning king there. So basically, you're getting a number one of one division versus the number one of another division. And it's not like, you know, Golovkin versus Andre Ward, where there's kind of a big weight difference. This isn't a big weight difference for these guys. So this is, and they're both action fighters. So this is going to be a ridiculous fight. A lot of skill is going to be involved. And you don't have anything better to do on the 4th of July anyway, other than blow up fireworks. And there's going to be fireworks in this fight. All right, nothing from you guys.
No, you piqued my interest, bro.
Andre Ward weighs 173 pounds for his 172-pound fight with Paul Smith. So is anybody going to give Andre Ward crap for draining himself? He's already 173 for a 172 fight, and we're like 2 weeks away.
What's Andre Ward doing fighting at a catchweight?
Maybe Paul Smith wanted the catchweight.
Oh, you think Paul Smith had the upper hand in the negotiations?
Yeah, I mean, he's coming off of 2 title fights with Arthur Abraham. He almost won one.
He gets those lucrative color commentary paychecks from the Sky Cards as well.
Correct. With his, I you know, just to like interrupt this, but like I don't. Paul Smith is actually a pretty good commentator, but I don't agree with his opinions a lot of the times. I think he's way too biased towards the guys that he knows.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there was one fight where I was like, "What is he talking about?" Like, open your eyes, man.
But he thinks David Price will be the real challenge for Anthony Joshua, his fellow Liverpudlian.
I'm sorry, Paul. That's not happening, and neither is a win against Andre Ward. And Andre Ward could weigh 162 right now, and it doesn't even matter. Ward is that kind of fighter. And the whole reason, I don't even, this isn't a news story. It's not even really worth bringing up, except for the fact that Ward is fighting on BET, and on a day with a lot of boxing, and he needs all the help he can get to get people to tune in. I also want to say, I really like that black ring last night for the Rock Nation card.
My wife said the same thing.
I thought it was
My
really
wife said
cool.
the
It looked
exact
really
same
cool.
thing. She's like, "This is great." She's like, "More fights need to have black rings."
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was great.
Yeah, it's nice.
So Ray Beltran tested positive for Stan.
So
Ozol.
can I just hang on, Angelo? Before we move on to the next topic, is there any connection between you mentioning Andre Ward was fighting on BET and then you thinking about a black ring? Is there something that you need to tell us?
Where are we going with this?
I was just messing with
Simon
him.
tried to corner me. I mean, Jason tried to corner me, but he will soon
Do you know
find
what
out that
BET is, Simon?
I'm Rigondo with this. You will not corner me.
Yeah,
So Andre Ward
we have it over here as well.
have what, black rings?
No, BET
Oh, you
TV
do?
channel. Yeah.
So Andre Ward is signed with Rock Nation, and Jay-Z is as well. And I figured that being in the Barclays Center, where the Brooklyn Nets play, where their colors are black and white, they would do something a little, you know, to get the fans there a little more excited about the fight. And what they did was they made the ring black, which if they're going to keep that color as part of Rock Nation's color scheme, I'm all for it. So if you're trying to make some insinuation about skin color or anything,
yeah, I'm just messing with you, man. I'm just messing with you.
nice try. Not going to happen. Let's
Teddy
talk about
Atlas showed up and he was like, and that's another black ring on the face of boxing. Boxing's the Cyclops.
Beltran was a little inspired by Bioshock when he decided to inject himself with stanozol. Didn't work, and it did work like a plasmid because he knocked AO senseless. But he tests positive, and it's sad that Beltran got tested positive, and I understand why he did it, But it's sad just knowing that Beltran's come up on the short end of the thing so many times, and these guys had terrible luck, and now he has terrible luck in that he got caught testing positive for taking a performance enhancer. What is you guys' stance? We don't really talk about PEDs too much on this podcast, but what's your stance? Should they be legal?
Absolutely not.
Now, that's the obvious answer, Why should drugs be legal? I think in our culture, the answer is just immediately no, because they're bad.
I'm not going as far as to say that.
Recreational drugs.
No, yeah,
legalized all day long.
All day long. Yep, that's fine.
All day long.
Performance enhancing drugs.
Giving out to kids.
Capacity, definitely not.
Cereal boxes, but.
No, so the reasoning that I would be the first thing that comes to mind for me is it's one thing when you're talking about allowing them in a sport, like cycling or baseball or something like that, where there's much less of a chance that the use of a substance by one competitor is going to end in the death of another competitor. Whereas in boxing, we're talking about, people's lives are on the line. And to give somebody an unfair advantage is just downright it's unethical.
The argument, I guess, against that, I think, would be, but if everybody's using it, everybody's on a level playing field, right?
Not everybody could afford it. And the people that could afford the best ones don't get caught.
Well, like if they were
today.
Legal, it wouldn't be about getting caught.
No, but even if it were legal, just like anything, wine or, marijuana, there's levels of, how good these substances are. It's the same thing with steroids. Like athletes who get paid the most are able to afford the best. You wouldn't have to conceal it, so that'd make it easier, but you'd still have to be able to afford the best ones.
Beyond that, even not just within the context of boxing, anytime that you make a playing field where to earn money you have to take experimental and potentially dangerous drugs, you create a culture where you've got whoever's willing to take the biggest risks to their health are the people who get the biggest financial reward. And when that correlation exists, you create a very dangerous and ethically fraught business. You want, ideally, the people who put in the most dedication, have the best skill levels, and work the hardest to get the highest results. And you can't ensure that that's always correct, but you can try to maximize it and work towards there. And I think that if you create a playing field where whoever takes the craziest chemicals into their body and enhances themselves in the most risky and dangerous ways comes out on top, then you create a monster of a sport.
Well, the other point that you made, Simon, that I think was, really good was about, the type of people that boxing attracts.
Yeah, it is often people with limited options and people from a bad lot in life, whether they've, come from broken homes or poverty or all sorts of underprivileged groups that find a home in boxing. When you couple that with, if you were to legalize performance-enhancing drugs, then you'd effectively be taking all of these disadvantaged people and then making them, for our amusement, take experimental and dangerous chemicals to then go and beat each other up. There's already problems within boxing in terms of it being a blood sport and the criticism that comes with it. But I think that you would be nailing that coffin firmly shut when you were to then couple in legalized peds into the mix.
This sounds like some.
But now, Angelo, you're pro
stuff.
ped use. So you're pro ped use, so go ahead and defend yourself.
I'm Switzerland in this conversation. I have no view. I think the way it's done right now is the proper way it should be done. And I do think that testing should be, if they're going to be illegal the way they are, should be a little tougher. Some
like maybe every fight gets tested.
Oh, what do you mean? Like, guys like Chavez Jr. don't have to submit post-fight urine tests, those kind? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Like maybe fighters like Golovkin hasn't ever taken a test.
Whoa, I'm editing that out.
Why would you edit that out?
Because he's a god.
You're saying it's okay how it is now.
I'm not saying it's okay.
You just said it is okay.
Golovkin did actually present post-fight urine samples, though, but I hear Marquez drunk them.
And then knocked out Pacquiao. Good night, folks.
Jason, you're on fire right now. You're accusing me of something that I never said.
No, I thought you said how it's being handled now is fine. And I may have misinterpreted what you said, but I had thought that you said the way that it's being handled now is fine.
And you're implying that the way it's being handled now means that it's open season?
Yeah, absolutely.
Apparently not for Ray Beltran.
Apparently not for Ray Beltran.
And Kid Galahad.
But he's gone.
Peterson, people are getting caught, not nearly as much as they should, but...
Yeah, I don't care about the people who get caught. I care about the people who don't get tested. Okay?
Yeah,
There's
absolutely.
a very big distinction. I don't care. You get caught good or bad, who cares? Like, you got tested. That's the bottom line that I'm trying to make.
Yeah.
Is that not every... Like, if you're seeing a fighter on HBO, don't assume they've been tested. Don't make that assumption.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing to indicate that they have until you've been notified otherwise.
And it's sad you can't make that assumption, isn't it?
It is sad, and that's where I'm trying to say that it's not okay how it is now. Because the way it's presented now is that you should have that assumption, and that you would think it would just be logical to assume that, and then you'd feel it would be safe. But it's not.
But they are tested. They're just not stringently tested. I mean, these aren't... I don't think that they're very thorough examinations where, they test it now and then they test it a year from now to make sure that, something you were taking wasn't even possible to be tested for at that point in time.
And that's one of the issues that you face, is that designer drugs move so fast that you can change their chemical, composition slightly to evade a test while it maintains its, the properties that you wanted in it. And it's a kind of arms race where they're always going to be one step ahead, because before they can test for it, they need to identify it. And to identify it, they need, so much sample analysis and testing. And that by the time that they've got around to finding it and being able to test for it, the manufacturers have moved on and tweaked it again.
Where's all this money going to come from, though, that's going to do all this testing that, needs to be done? I can understand that Al Heyman's doing it because he's got his own, ridiculous, I don't know how he's cutting the money, but, everybody's getting fairly paid over there.
It's the two things I always think that they should do, is that there should be a percentage of every fighter's purse sanctioned under any, committee. There's a percentage that goes towards Universal Drug Testing Federation, and then there'll be an amount that goes towards a universal healthcare for retired boxers and, boxers that sustain injuries in the ring.
I bet you those titles will always be vacant.
Well, I mean, it's up to the sanctioning bodies to sort of enforce it and put some teeth behind those, but that's something we famously never see.
Right. And I mean, obviously that would be the best case scenario for anything, but I think Angelo hit on the biggest point of all of it, which is where does even somebody like me who's like really protesting, I don't have the delusion that the money's there for it. You know what I mean? It's not it's a delusion, but because the money is there, but I don't have the delusion that the promoters or fighters or managers
the promoters are going to give up their percentage.
Exactly. Nobody's going to hand over part of their percentage to get the expensive testing done. Like, that's just not going to happen. It's just not going to happen.
You know what would be a good fight for Kell Brook?
A PED test?
He'd easily pass.
No, I know. I'm just
you don't have to accuse somebody of being on PEDs because they knock out JoJo Dan.
How funny would it be if Guerrero tests positive?
That's not even funny. If Guerrero did test positive, that would be really sad. No, I think Saddam Ali would be a good fight for Kell Brook. They both got similar styles.
Why would you risk that? There's huge risk to reward ratio for Kell Brook. Kell Brook's got a belt. Saddam Ali's obscure over here.
It's pretty obscure over here too.
Well, this is it.
Talking with like us three. I wasn't.
I would love that match.
It would be it's a fantastic match.
With a matchmaking hat on, it makes no sense whatsoever.
I know, but I was just being illogical for a minute.
No, but talk about a fun fight. Talk about a compelling fight. Yeah.
Anyway, speaking about welterweights, Mikey Garcia in the news, probably going to return. And the thing is that he's been tweeting on Twitter that if he comes back, he is not taking a tune-up fight. He's not taking anything slow. He wants Terrence Crawford. He wants something like that.
Okay. I was going to say Crawford or Pacquiao. I mean, they were grooming him for Pacquiao.
Yeah, they were. While he was a featherweight. Unbelievable.
Right. But the plans were in place. They were Pacquiao was moving down in weight. They were it seemed like they were really on a collision course for each other for a minute there.
Do you guys care anymore about this return? I mean, he's been out of the ring for so long.
I can take it or leave it.
I care about it. No, he's a fantastic technical fighter. He's a can't miss fighter. You have to be rooting for him to return. He's one of these guys, and it's just so ridiculous that both him and Andre Ward have these amazing technical styles, and both have been sidelined in their prime years.
Yeah, this is true, but I think that when you hold a torch for something like that, you end up causing yourself undue frustration and hassle. I'd rather take the approach that when it's announced, signed, then I'll allow myself to be excited for it so that I'm not fretting over, is he coming back? When's he coming back? If he comes back, brilliant. That'd be a good announcement.
Yeah, I'm not...
You like Mikey, don't you, Angela?
Yeah, you. How do you not be a fan of Mikey? I mean, he's got the style and the personality where he's just it's hard to root against him. He's quiet. He fights. He can fight in an entertaining style, but most of the time he doesn't because he doesn't need to. He can outbox you easily. He has power.
What do you say? What do you guys think about this fight, though? Who do you favor? Let's just say Mikey Garcia is the same Mikey Garcia that you saw in his last fight.
Yeah,
know what I mean?
What fight are we talking about?
Crawford, against Crawford.
At what weight?
140.
It's going to be 140.
One-sided Crawford.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, yeah.
I know. I think Crawford might be able to just walk through him. It's tough.
If it's the Mikey who
If it's the Mikey that you saw in your last fight, that is different. I don't know. He should pose Crawford a challenge.
If Mikey comes back, the same Mikey that left, so it was like he never took this year and a half off.
Right.
But the ring rust is real. It happens.
No, look, let's just say...
Yeah, let's put that away because...
put it to the side because that's what makes the conversation interesting. Right, it's what makes the conversation interesting.
And the weight class, be jumping a couple.
Yeah, that one I'm not willing to put aside. He's had a year and a half to get up to weight.
Yeah, and no professional experience at that level.
Right.
Well, Miguel Cotto had no professional experience at middleweight, and he did all right.
Are we comparing apples to oranges? Is that what we're doing?
They're both great tasting fruit.
I think if Mikey with Mikey...
You think he beats Crawford. I know you do.
What?
No, I don't think...
Yes, you do. You don't think Mikey Garcia
beats
could beat
Pacquiao. I don't think he could beat Crawford, though. I think Crawford's too long. Crawford...
You don't think he'd be able to time him?
Garcia didn't struggle against Burgos, but it wasn't the best performance. I mean, it was a pretty boring decision in which Mikey never got out of first or second gear, I think.
What is it that's giving you this confidence on Mikey Garcia at these higher weight, great weight? Am I right in thinking he's never competed professionally above super feather?
That's why. I'm not thinking about that.
Like, has he been knocking out Amir Khan in sparring to give you this confidence?
No, we're doing kind of more like a pound for pound analysis of the fight more than anything.
Right. I think that's the best way to put it. Obviously, I'm not stupid, okay? If he comes back and fights Terence Crawford, he's going to get knocked out. He's going to get stopped in 6 rounds, probably. Just because, dude, you've been out of the ring for almost 2 years, fighting almost 25, is it 25? No, 15 pounds higher than where you... Actually, no, it's 10 pounds higher than where you were when you left. And I know Garcia was rehydrating a lot and all that stuff, but
he was. Yeah.
Crawford's a much bigger fighter. We know what we're getting with Crawford. It wouldn't be close. We can fantasize about Garcia. You know what? Actually, Crawford's not that big. I just looked it up. He's only 5'8". Garcia's 5'7". I thought for this whole time, the way Crawford fights, I thought he was like 5'10".
Well, he's got long arms. What's his reach?
70.
He seems rangy.
Long. That's not long.
It's long. It was long for when he was down at 130.
Right. Erislandy Lara is an inch taller and has 5 inches of reach on him.
Yeah, and he fights 3 weight classes above him.
So what?
2 weight
Crawford
classes.
walks around at that weight class.
End of the Mikey Garcia madness hour.
Yeah, I don't even know what we're talking about anymore.
All right, so that's it for this week. We will be back next week, and we'll talk all about Deontay Wilder
Garcia.
And more on Mikey Garcia, the latest on the Mikey Garcia saga, actually. What's next for Alfredo Angulo and Marvin Sansona? Oh, we should have talked about that this week, but no, next week we will be back. Hopefully we have some more news, the latest on the Mikey Garcia Madness Hour. We'll remind you again about the Francisco Rodriguez Jr. versus Donnie Nietes fight. We're going to remind you every week. Same with Andre Ward. Thanks for listening.